Welcome to the Mojo for Musicians podcast from Manny Cabo Media, where we dig deep into today's top strategies to help you take your music career to the next level, along with real, raw, and uplifting conversations with industry professionals that are making moves, making a difference, and making the best versions of themselves to inspire you to do the same. And for all of our Mojo Maniacs out there, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, please be sure to give us a positive review on your favorite listening platform. Support for the Mojo for Musicians podcast comes from Stedman, tools for the studio and beyond, because your voice deserves to be heard. Sennheiser, inspired by music. And Cranium, scientifically designed products for bald, shaved, and buzzed heads. So get your head in the game and own your dome. And now, here's your host, Manny Cabo. All right, Mojo Maniacs, welcome back to yet another, and I could definitely say rockin' episode once you see who I have on here. But as always, I got to thank my sponsors and everyone who makes this show possible, of course, and all you guys out there listening, engaging, and downloading these episodes. So thank you for your continued support, above all, and making Mojo for Musicians one of the top best music interview podcasts in the world. But now, on to our guest. Now, she's been making some of the most killer, or in this case, I should say Kylla, and you'll understand the play on words momentarily, stage wear from, some of the biggest names in metal. And we're talking rock world in general. Names like Alice Cooper, Accept, Rob Zombie, Judas Priest, Slipknot. Just way too many names to mention in this half-hour episode. Along with the WWE, AEW, and tons of pro wrestlers since, 2012. So she's definitely doing something right. But there's so much in the short amount of time that I've met her and read about it, to this woman, that I'm just going to bring her out, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So let's welcome to the show the incredible talents of Kim Dylla of Kylla Custom Rock Wear. How are you, Kylla? Welcome to the show.
What's up? I'm doing great. Just got back from the 70,000 tons of metal cruise that I've been working with since 2014, which is one of my favorite partnerships, I guess, or events that we do. My voice is messed up from screaming on a boat for weeks and picking up various strains of boat SARS, but it was all worth it.
It always is, You go through the doldrums. It's like when I was on tour, we all got sick with the stomach bug. But when we look back hindsight, we're like, you know what? It tells a better story, when we go through something so traumatic, because it was awful. So I can only imagine the craziness that you endured on that boat trip, man. It must have been a blast at the same time.
Well, there are new strains of tour aids that have emerged, in the lingering dormancy of music. Yeah. And Boat SARS is like 60 bands of tour aids plus plane aids coming together. That's and just blah. You can kill it if you drink enough pina coladas.
Of course. That's always the viable remedy. But listen, first, I got to give a big kudos and thank you to our mutual friend, Steve Brown, who I tour with on the Wizards of Winter, who actually said, dude, if you want some seriously cool custom clothing, let me hook you up with this girl. And, the rest, as they say, was history, because here you are. So, as I alluded to before, there's so many layers to you, right? And I can empathize. I really, really can. I wear many hats as a podcaster, photographer, voiceover artist, and singer. So let's face it, you do a lot of fun shit. And granted, very laborious shit, but nonetheless fun as hell. So the first question has to do with compartmentalizing everything that you do, because you're running a successful business from across the pond, Sweden here and then in Virginia. And it definitely puts a lot of constraints on your personal life. So how do you do it?
Well, running a business is all consuming. I really don't see how anyone does things like have kids and run a business. I don't have kids. I don't watch TV, and I don't sleep. Occasionally, I sleep like Sundays or in the mornings usually. Kylla Custom Rock Wear, since I started it, has taken over my life, because I not only have to design the clothes, but I have to sew them. Then I have to go to shows and festivals, which is the actual fun part of the show, and see our clothes in action, fit the musicians, of course, meet new musicians that want clothing. I can't meet people if I just sit in my studio and sew all the time, like a quilt shop. So, but just balance. I would say I've always fancied myself a Renaissance woman, but you kind of have to phase in and out projects. Sort of like
Right.
when you're on a touring cycle, you write the album different times than when you play the shows, and then you have some downtime to
100%.
reset and then do your family thing. So,
So now wait a
I
second.
have high.
I got to cut you off because
Yeah.
that's not all. Like you're a singer, right? Who by the
Yeah.
way, guys, for all you Gwar fans, was in Gwar, and now you're currently still singing for one of Ireland's folk metal bands, right? Like
Yeah.
I can't remember.
It's called Cruachan.
Cruachan.
It's really hard to pronounce.
Right? No,
but-
it's cool. It's cool, but they've been around since the '90s, and you're also in a band with your boyfriend Johan. Now, this is pretty amazing, right? So when you're not singing, like I said before, you're traveling back and forth from Virginia to Sweden, right? Both with your clothing facilities, or you're painting as well. These physics machines, that, and you just had an exhibition in DC. I read that. That's pretty spectacular. And in addition to that, if that weren't enough, you speak 4 languages: German, Swedish, Norwegian, and of course, English. So you have to be part unicorn. I realize that. And so again, this compartmentalizing, these layers, they really can be exhausting. I didn't want to interrupt, but I just had to point out other things that you're doing aside from the clothing gig.
Yeah, things that I'm really bad at would be like being home and cooking nice meals and sleeping and
You
taking
think?
care of myself and things like that, but
Yeah.
I'm getting better at it because I just turned 40 this past week, and I'm not getting any younger,
Well,
and
happy
you only have
birthday.
one body. Thank you. And if you run yourself into the ground, or allow yourself to get too motivated with too many things at once, and not just allow your body to have downtime and allow yourself to eat healthy and allow yourself to sleep properly, it's great. But focus is a really important thing, that it's a virtue of Kung Fu that I've been trying to teach myself, especially with digital devices. Because if you have a job like mine where you have to be attached to your phone, talking to clients and assistants
Oh, it's
and
a
stuff,
lifestyle.
it's hard to get
It's a
in a
lifestyle.
zone, So I don't know. I just recently got an iPhone. I was an Android person for years, but I really like the focus mode thing where I can set the notifications off. It helps me focus. I also like to work all night in the middle of the night because it's a quiet time. I think morning people do the same thing when they get up really early and they have this peace where they can focus
me.
for several
That's me.
hours. Yeah. I'm the same way, but it's like after midnight to like 4 or 5 a.m. That's my real, like, I'm awake and creating, whether it's writing music or focusing on
Well, you're a nocturnal
designs
creature.
and stuff.
Most musicians are. So
Yeah.
it's definitely not a rarity.
Yeah, it's but that time helps, having sort of like a non-traditional creation time.
Yeah.
But it's not the best for like getting good sleep or taking care of yourself. So I actually struggle with that, finding balance for everything. But I would say I go through cycles. Like the clothing business is constant, but when I'm not having huge tour or wardrobe deadlines, and it's just daily orders, I try to make time for the gym, make time to on the
for you.
weekends and in the evenings, like record and write music. And then when I'm not writing or recording music, I make paintings. My parents were physicists, so I grew up in the science world, and I like to, paint their giant, fusion stellarator devices because they're really neat. It's sci-fi.
I love
like,
it. I love it. I really do. And, again, it's a huge testament as to who you are as a consummate artist. I would have to say that. There's no other word for you. But let's move on to the more personal side of Kylla. Now, question number 2, as I said, it's a little bit more sensitive, but you're very open about it, and I appreciate that, because it's tough to talk about our personal strifes, right? Especially for those coming from a health standpoint. So you have alopecia areata. Correct me if I mispronounce it, right? Which
Yeah, no, that you pronounced it right. So when I was 16, I lost my hair to an immune condition. I have a lot of immune conditions, like immune warrior. But this is a wig, and I'm wearing silver hair now for people listening. But I'm a natural redhead, and I had beautiful hair. It was my favorite thing about myself. And then I lost it. And I feel like if I didn't lose my hair at a formative time when I was a teenager, I would be just like everyone else. I wouldn't have, been pushed to find myself and my confidence as an individual. And then once I was confident with being bald, luckily I have like a nice head. Like I look good bald. Like it's, I used to just rock it all the time.
I feel you on that one.
You never know until you lose your head. You could get like a shit stick and like, have a bumpy flat head or something. But luckily I have a good one. So, and then I just kind of look like a mannequin. And then I just buy all sorts of fun wigs, and it's really an advantage because I can just match my hair to my outfit or change it up. I never get bored. My boyfriend says he has like 7 different girlfriends. It was really funny because we were like staying at this fancy hotel, and every day I had different hair at breakfast, and the hotel staff were like, "Who is this rock star dude with all these girls?"
That's too funny. Well, that's one of the reasons, that was the impetus behind the question, because obviously you've managed to leverage that completely, and you get pretty animated with them, of course, with the wigs, but also, like, how has it hindered you over the years? And not to focus on this, because there's so many people out there, they're afraid to talk about it, and they're hesitant to do the things that they really love because of this, I don't know if you wanted to call it, it's an impaired type of mentality. But let me get your perspective on that. Obviously, you've done very well with it. You're open about it. You make fun of it, but also you've created this creation around it. And I think that's absolutely brilliant, because I look past that. You told me this right now. I realize that. I'm like, I don't even see that anymore. I just see the animated, the colorful, the boisterous, and above all, the creative, Kylla.
I think it's important for people with health conditions. I have a lot of friends with health conditions. Obviously, when you first start dealing with it, this is a process. I was very embarrassed about losing my hair, and I struggled with my confidence. And eventually, you either just agree to be a victim and wallow in your own misery and have this victim complex thing, which I don't like. And I think it's bad for society, and it's bad for people's confidence. Or you find your own confidence, and you like kind of say, like, laugh at the haters, when people like make fun of me being bald. I'm like, what if I had cancer, like right now, and you were just making shitty comments? Like, I feel bad for you. Like,
Hey,
you're just an asshole. That's not my problem, like, or if you don't like my hair, like, I'm sorry, like, you don't have to date me,
Well, that's just it. This is what I want to delve into, because how did you yourself, everyone has a different answer to this. I found my confidence through different means. How did you personally, or what was the moment where you're like, you know what, the hell with this? I'm going to use this to my advantage. When was that?
I think it was actually when I found the music community. So I started hanging out in the goth and metal scene, and everyone told me how beautiful I looked bald, and like they really loved the wigs thing. And if you're struggling to fit into like normal society, and you find yourself in a rock and roll community, and people just lift our own individual weirdnesses up, like that's when I found my people kind of thing. And I don't need acceptance with my health problem from like mainstream society, even though it's fine now. Everyone wears wigs. It used to not be that way in like the 90s,
absolutely.
When I was dealing with it. But there's always this community of misfits that bonds together through like rock and roll and metal and gospel and punk and whatever sort of music subculture you want to get involved in. And
it's interesting you say that, because being in high school, you remember the goth crew, they all had their faces painted white, where they looked like outcasts, rather, vampiric to a certain degree. But I was friends with everybody. I was an athlete, but I loved everybody, especially because I had this deep affinity for music. So the goth crowd was always the visually pleasing for me. I'm like, wow, they're dressed so freaking cool, and they're listening to this music. So I can completely relate to what you've attested to. And I'm just grateful that you found that niche, that group, because sometimes it's very, very important. But now here's the caveat. You'll find it, but you have to do the work. And just like you alluded to, you can't sit there and feel sorry about yourself. That just won't work. That will preclude any type of mobility. And I've always believed that action breeds inspiration, and not the other way around. And I'm glad you took the action, is what I'm trying to say.
It's easier for people now too, because I see so many, girls and guys with alopecia, like posting videos of themselves, like doing their makeup and wigs and lifting each other up, or people with disabilities that, might be more disabling other than something cosmetic, like losing your hair, which also sucks, but it's not as bad as someone who doesn't have arms or legs. But I don't know, online I see so many videos of people just putting themselves out there and be like, hey, I'm a person. This is me looking pretty on Instagram, and this is me like traveling, and here's me, in Cannes or whatever they want to do. And that's cool. I think everybody should just like lift each other up. It doesn't have to be like, hey, everything's okay and everyone is the same. We're not. But Like, don't, what is it, dull someone's shine.
Right. I like that. But, you know, and I think you're touching on a very sensitive but very important and impactful topic. For me, anyway, this is my personal opinion. I think the most important thing that we as designers, as musicians, as anybody in the artistic community that does, you know, presentations or shows off their creative nature, the number one thing that you can offer your audience is authenticity. And when you're fully transparent about who you are and you just own it, then you are the voice. At that particular moment, it's your responsibility to be the voice to create that vibe, that impetus for everyone else to follow suit. So I commend you on what you're doing. Yeah.
Well, it's like universal emotions, you know, when a singer speaks their heart about a tough thing they're going through or something, you're simultaneously helping everyone listening to that song that relates to you, you know, through that moment. In my clothing business, some people are really exclusive and only work with people in super famous bands. To me, I want to make everyone feel like a rock star, because I know that feeling when you finally get that really cool leather jacket that you've been eyeing and you just put it on and you're like in your sweatpants or whatever. And then you're like, yeah. You know?
Believe me, I've been eyeing a lot of stuff, but the only thing that scares me is when I tally up the results of how much everything is going to be. I'm like, yeah, man, this is going to be a very expensive visit to your website. But let's move on to question number 3. And this question is a little bit more like the chicken or the egg, you know, like which one came first? Now, was it your passion for music or was it your passion for design? And I myself lean more, as I mentioned before, toward the darker side of things. And I know you've embraced that and have created an incredible line and career, as evidenced by, you know, your clientele. So talk to me about that. And what advice would you give to our future fashion entrepreneurs out there looking to do something similar to what you've successfully executed?
So I'm actually just a musician that made my own stage clothes and like a weird metal goth chick that couldn't find or afford anything to wear that I liked. So I started making my own clothes. Right. And then it was actually my friend Joey Jordison, who is conveniently or inconveniently the same size as I am. He was like, I really like that jacket. Can I borrow it? And he like, you know, indefinitely borrowed it, aka never gave it back. But then he wore it to like the Grammys and stuff, and all these people kept asking him like, hey, where'd you get that jacket? And it was just one that I wore on stage for me. Right. And then all these people like Rob Flynn from Machine Head and Cradle of Filth and like everybody started calling me on and I started making them jackets. And pretty soon I was like, what if I quit my faculty job? You know?
What if? What's the possibilities of me killing this with these? You see what I did?
The calculation. Yeah, the calculation was like, how many jackets a month do I need to make to pay my health insurance? Right, exactly. You know, and my mortgage, you know. But I took the leap and never looked back. But I would say my advice for future people who want to be designers or really any sort of like industry niche small business is, who do you know? What do you do well that those people need? Because
filling that void, of course.
Steamrolled and happened. I didn't like set out to be a metal fashion designer. I just made clothes, and I knew a bunch of musicians because I'm a musician, and they all were like, "Oh, I want that," you know. Right. And so I was like, okay, well, I never needed to advertise. The people that I know and the people that they know want and need this thing that I do, because there's really not very many people in the music industry that make like menswear or costumes or custom clothing. I mean, there's a hand, like I can name on one hand the amount of people that do this. Of good quality
though, and of good quality too.
And also like I'm a musician, so a lot of people are like a fashion designer, but they don't really know how to make a piece of clothing that's going to hold up to like the rigors of touring or not feel like a trash bag suit when you wear it, you know, and you sweat on stage.
You start the show with one vest, and then you end the show with like 3 missing buttons and probably like a torn sleeve. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the old split crotch Lenny Kravitz show. Get more than you pay for.
Exactly. And you know, all valid points. So listen, we've come to the end of the interview. I told you it'd be painless. So the signature question of the show is, what's your mojo? Like, I know you love this stuff. I do, and it's pretty taxing. It's a daunting task trying to successfully accomplish everything with deadlines and writing songs and going on tour. But what gets you up in the morning? Like, what makes you look in the mirror and say, Kylla, you know what? This is insane, but dude, I would die without this career.
My mojo is seeing bands that I have appreciated and loved their music for years and years wear something that I just made on stage and tell me that, they finally feel like the show is complete, because
awesome.
they've never worn costumes before, or just like hearing that album for years and being able to like put that vision into cloth.
Yeah, that's pretty
seeing
epic.
that
That
on a
really
big
is
stage.
epic. Like you look at a band like
Or-
Slipknot, they are
yeah.
very elaborate, and like you're watching them, you're like, you see that? That's mine. That's mine. He's wearing my
Yeah.
stuff. That's pretty gratifying.
Or like the main event at WrestleMania, I did Randy Orton and like Bray Wyatt one year and got to do this whole like horror post-apocalyptic look. And they invited me to the show, and just watching your work that you created and like thousands and or millions of people appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's validation, I guess.
It really is.
But the other thing, it doesn't have to be some big fame name dropping thing. When I get an email from like Bob's local band that I just made some vests for, and they're like, we feel like rock stars and we had the best time at our show. Thanks for like paying attention to our deadline.
Great.
And like, that makes me feel great too, because I remember when I was like 21 and in a local bar band and how I felt when I got that really cool stage vest. And that makes me happy too.
Yeah, well, you know what? I can relate to that because, I've been an editorial fashion music photographer close to 20 years working for record labels. And working for that high caliber of expectation and then helping a local band do like a front cover vibe, because that was my whole tagline, if you will. I shoot you like it's a front cover of Rolling Stone. And because I'm a musician just like you can relate. Right. It's easier for you to bridge that gap. So I get you, completely and utterly get you.
Make everyone feel like rock stars.
Yes.
You never know.
I love that. That's a tagline of the show. Make everyone feel like a rock star. So listen, anything else that you would like to promote, how we find you, and what's in the future for Kylla?
So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Kylla Custom Rock Wear, Kylla Custom CUSTOM Rock Wear. Kim Dylla is my name. You can Google me. I'm in Cruachan, which is Cruachan from Dublin, Ireland. And our new album, The Living and the Dead, is coming out on Dustbutts Records in the next month. And then my studio project is called The Burned Over. We're also on Spotify and Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. And so the Cruachan album is coming up, and I'm working on a new wardrobe for Wasp right now, so that should be really cool.
Wow, Blackie. I'm a wild child, let me love you. Dude, I love it.
So, and a lot of black leather, no saw blade cod pieces for them this time. Got something really cool from Mike Duda.
I remember those with the saw, the half cut saw. I remember that like if it was yesterday.
Really cool.
Wow, that really, really is. Well, listen, it has been a blast. Thank you so much for sharing your journeys, your struggles, your successes, and sharing your mojo above all. You've been fantastic, and I wish you nothing but more love, peace, and abundance in whatever excursions you may be on.
Thanks for having me. Keep up the great mojo.
Absolutely. I'll talk to you real soon, Kylla. Very soon.
Bye.
Trust me, I might be visiting your website, so if you get a couple of purchases unexpectedly from a guy in Jersey, then you'll know who they're from.
Well, Jersey people are the best people.
You know it. All right. Great talking to you. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Take care, Kylla.
This has been a Mojo for Musicians podcast. If you're a musician, industry professional, or a voice with a powerful message and wanting to share your mojo and stories of success with our listeners, or simply share some feedback on today's episode, we'd love to hear from you. So send us an email at info@mannycabo.com. As always, much love and peace. Live to inspire. Thanks for listening.